Hello, everybody. Welcome to this comic book webinar, which under the theme Comic Book in the Age of Social Media and Online Platforms. This is my great pleasure to host five persons of 5 different countries, which each one of them is working in the comics area. Each one of them is linked with everybody there to the web, to the digital culture. This webinar is organized by the 4 French Institutes of Denmark, Finland, Nordland, and I forgot what, Finland, Denmark, and Sweden. Okay. Don't want to be rude. This takes place for France in a year which is now the 2012 is the comic book year, year of the comics in France, l'année de la bande dessinée. And so we have of course a French guest there, which is Julien Aubert. And this takes place too in a special month for the French Institute because it's a digital November, the festival of the French Institute for Digital Culture. So here we are 5 guests. So Julien Aubert, which is a producer, H-Lehkonen, which is an author and publisher too, Ola Hellsten, which worked for a comics festival in Norway or in Sweden.
Sweden.
No, so it's Frode, which is in Norway, and worked for the comics festival of what I'm back at. What is the name? It's the Raptus festival, and Tor, which is author. And somehow self-publisher? No, just author.
Sorry, what do you say?
You are mostly author, and you're self-publishing too.
Yeah, I totally self-promoting, self-writing, everything.
Everything gonna change. So I will make a short presentation of what is comics in France. Which is for French public very clear, but not maybe not for the Nordic people. In France, of course, we got a very dynamic market with a lot of authors, a lot of publishers, and somehow 5,000 new books a year, which makes somehow quite difficult to be acknowledged. To have a success because there are so many authors, so many books. So there are more and more authors which are finding their ways on internet and with the digital communities to find their way. And I'm pretty sure that is a link between the French comics and the Nordic comics, but I will let you introduce yourself, talking about how is comic in your own country, who you are, of course, which is the main and most important things, and what is your project. If you agree, I will start with H-Lehkonen, which is an author and publisher and editor, of course. HP?
Yes. Thank you. I will first start by introducing myself, and I will share my screen so you can see this beautiful presentation. There's some pictures so that you can enjoy art while you're looking at my face. My face is less interesting than my art after all. So I am H-Lehkonen from Finland, as Wandrille already told us. And like my interest in comics started very young because my dad has dyslexia, which basically means that reading is very, very difficult for him. So what he did was that he was reading comics for us, which basically meant that he looked at the pictures and pretended to know what was going on in them. So he was basically making up his own stories. Back then, I didn't know that Asterix was called Asterix because he came up with his own names for everything because reading was difficult. But that was the reason why I really, really wanted to make comics from an early age. I first really wanted to make comic books, like actual printed books, which is interesting because we are now in a digital comics seminar. And I, to this day, have never been published on print by a print publisher in Finland. I have had some anthologies and stuff going on in other countries, but in Finland, I don't have a comics book published at all by a publisher. But I ended up getting on Webtoons, which is, it was an accident. Here's my first Webtoon in this picture. The accident happened in a way that I had a group of friends who were all taking part in this Webtoon competition. They were all raving about it. And I kind of wanted to be part of that group. So I decided to also take part in the competition. I didn't have much expectations, but it kind of happened. I ended up taking part in the competition. None of us won or anything like that. But after the competition was over, Webtoon contacted me and wanted to publish this series, Immortal Nerd, from me. And I ended up working for them for 4 years, and I basically almost still do. I am on an undefined hiatus right now. The first series was Immortal Nerd, and the second one was called Life Outside the Circle, and here's a picture of that one. These are both situated in Finland. Life Outside the Circle in present day and Immortal Nerd on faraway future. All of this got me very obsessed with digital comics, and I won't be going into more detail in everything that I have tried out because I got so obsessed with digital comics that I wanted to try out everything, and we will be discussing everything later. But I started trying out everything, and I started sliding into DMs of different digital comics publisher CEOs just to ask more questions. And nowadays, if there is a person needed to lecture or talk about comics, digital comics in Finland, I am there. Like right now, Maura Manninen from Finnish Comic Society asked if I want to join this because, well, I now accidentally happen to know a lot just because I wanted to be part of that one group, which I never really did become part of because I started working for Webtoon and I didn't have time to hang out with them anymore. So I kind of lost. Nowadays, this is my newest project. This is why I'm on an undefined hiatus from Webtoon. I am working on my own small publisher called DigiComix. We publish LGBT comics on queerwebcomic.com. And here is a couple of titles from our repertoire. The Dreams of Queer Utopia is an anthology, and the other two are my personal comics that I have made for them. Now I will stop this screen share in here. That was about me mostly. And for Finnish comics, I will be talking more about Finnish comics, but I will just say that in Finland, I think the reasons why our digital comics are doing quite well is that we have had this sarjakuvablogit.com, which is for comics blogging for a really long time. And that has kind of opened a lot of doors for digital comics in Finland. So digital comics are doing great. Print is slowly getting less and less print, and especially less and less translations from other countries. So that's the situation we are in Finland right now. I will stop now so that I don't take other people's time.
It's okay. You were great. Thank you. And then I will switch to Tor. Tor, which is author, and we'll speak about him and his work, his project, and maybe comics in Denmark.
Yes, thank you. I will start just telling, you know, a little bit of. I grew up in the countryside in Denmark and really wanted to. I started drawing from an early age, and I wanted to be a comic book artist when I was like 10 years old, and I started just drawing, you know, my own comics and wanted to do that. But then when I got older, it became more into the animation industry, and today I'm doing animated films, and then I had this project that was actually a film, but we couldn't get it financed, and I just loved it so much, and I still had that dream of one day doing a comic book. So I kind of, you know, started doing this project because I thought it's so weird and it's so great a universe, and you know, we can't make someone put $1 million into it, but I could do it on my own and get it out there, and that's why I started Betsy and the Mutant Scouts. And I think I want to show you a little. I have to find out how I share the screen. Just a moment. Boom, boom, boom. Everything is in French and on this computer, so actually, I think it's this button. All right. Tell me if you see my screen now.
Not exactly yet, but it's coming.
It's coming?
Yeah.
Do you see my screen now?
No, but it's really
it's working.
Yeah, it's rolling. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Good. So, and you see everything, or you see like the prologue and everything here?
Yes.
Good. So I just want to like, I started to do the web, I mean, it's basically just a comic book that's online, and as you can see, you can scroll down, and then once in a while I make a new chapter. But it's about this a scouts camp, which is right next to an atomic power plant. And then in the first chapter, you see, you see the whole power plant explodes, and there's a meltdown. You can see here it shakes, and then I put in like these animated panels, which have like sometimes only 3 images in a loop or something like that, but like really simple animations. And then the whole power plant explodes, and leaving all these poor scouts, mutating them into you know, man-eating monsters. And this is the first chapter, which is you know, the whole introduction to the whole universe, where all the scouts turn into different crazy monsters. You have this guy who gets a lot of eyes, and then this guy who's eaten too much dough and has puked. Then suddenly he pukes out all his intestines and crawls around like a weird creature. Yes, and that's basically my comic here, and I just want to quickly show you that you know, this is the introduction to the whole universe and the whole concept and everything. Then we have you know, the main character, which is a little girl who wants to you know, impress her father and goes to this summer camp before this accident, and you know, she's very clumsy, and she's actually a very, very bad scout. But then suddenly you know, the whole world is coming to an end, and everybody turns into monsters, and she's actually the one who can save them all. Yes, I will try to switch back to myself if I can. All right.
It's on the top of the screen.
Yeah, it's a green button, but I don't. Maybe it's something like
yeah. Yeah, it's back. It's
yes.
back.
Okay. Perfect. All right, but yeah, short about. Just a minute. Yeah, I'm back. Good. Yeah, short about comics in Denmark. I think I have the big, you know, the reason why I enjoy making Betsy is because
I'm sorry, but I think you're back on your screen.
Okay. Yes. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'll try to do like now.
You were back, then we came back.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we're back. We're back.
I can't see myself, but it's when you can see me, everything is good. Yeah, I as I said, I started doing this, and for me, it's a very nice way to make a comic and put it out there and get an audience and everything. But the competition on the internet is really fierce, and it's hard to get heard. You know, I've won 2 awards in Denmark, which I'm very, very happy about, and that helps a lot. But it's still a really big, the internet is just so big, and it's hard to compete out there. But eventually, you know, it will grow, and people will know about it.
And does it will it goes offline?
Right now it's only online.
It's only online. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm hoping to one day, you know, that there's a publisher who says like, okay, this is something I want to put out, and I think now there's actually 5 chapters, and the story is beginning to, you know, in the beginning I only had like 2, you know, they are coming like once in a while, and I think now it's beginning, you know, now you begin to see the story and everything.
And yeah, tell us briefly about the comics in Denmark.
Yeah, I think there's a really great small scene for a lot of like underground stuff, and I think it's easy to you know, not easy, but I think there's a good small market for really weird, small artistic comic books, but you know, it's not a business where you get rich or anything, and I think there's no really popular comic books in Denmark, but a lot of small art, like a big art scene, I would say. And
some festival too?
Yeah, there's one big festival at least. That's I think it's just called Comics. But it's a big Danish festival, and it's not every year, but I think it's almost every, no, maybe even every second year. I can't really remember, but that's a big one.
Okay, but that's a good transition to speak to Frode for the festival Raptus. Frode, please introduce yourself.
Yes, just a correction. I think there are 2 conventions in Denmark, just Art Bubble and
yeah, that's true.
So yeah, in Norway we have several comic book conventions. We have, of course, the convention I'm involved in, which is called Raptus, and you also have Oslo Comic Expo. You have a smaller one which is called Bergtat. But of course, this year there have been 4 conventions. Digitally, all of them, because of Corona and all these things. I think it was 2 or 3 who said they would cancel this year because of Corona, because it would be too much hassle to try to change everything. So there are conventions in Norway, but back to me, I liked comics since I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. I can still remember buying my first Phantom comics and Flash Gordon back in when I was 5 years old. So I grew up with those kind of comics and Disney comics, and always liked to draw myself. So I got one person who said he sat beside me when we were doing learning to be teachers, because if they've got too dull in front, he could just watch what I was drawing. So I like drawing and started collecting comics. As you can see behind me, there are some comics all over here in this room. So I'm collecting comics. I come into the Raptus festival after the first few years, which I was not part of, but I knew the people behind it, and they invited me, and I came in and have stayed since 1999 in Raptus. Leader or second in command, whatever was needed. I said quite early that the people behind the festival should know what comics is all about. So we invited like Pat Mills, Disraeli, Matt Brooker, and other people to come and teach the people behind the convention, plus amateurs, to make comics. So I have made comics as well and published back in the days, because it's better if we who run the convention knows what making comics is all about. Later on, I started a publishing company together with a friend, and we published some comic books. So I have been editing, translating, lettering, edited, designing, and selling, which is probably the hardest thing to do with a comic book. And that was from English. And later on, I translated from French last year with the Lugui. So I've done some translation as well. I have comic courses. I write about comics. So I'm part of the Comic Book Society in Norway as well, the board member there. So I've been involved in comics for as long as I can remember. But then to go, what is comics in Norway? It's quite big. Norway was, back in the days, the country that sold most comics per population, I think. Japan probably have passed us the way in the back. But Donald Duck sold more than 200,000 copies each week like 20 years ago. And that's insane if you think about it. But still selling a lot of comics. It's Disney, not so much superheroes. Some French, Belgian comics. There's a lot of Scandinavian comic book strips, which is published in Norway. And they are very popular. So Johan Wandrille from Sweden has been published in Norway. We have Haaland from Finland. He was visiting Raptus 2 years ago. Great guy. And so Scandinavia has a little bit same interests when it comes to comics. But comic strips is probably the most popular thing. So the guy behind this comic, which has been published in Denmark at least, Pondus, he's, I'm not sure how many millions he makes a year. He sells insane amount of comics. And well, let's just say he's the inspiration for a lot of young comic book artists, because comic strips is the big thing. But we have also quite a good development of alternative comics in Oslo. Jippy and Don't Comprendre Press is two publishing companies in Oslo. They, as well as other publishing companies as well, but they publish quite a lot of good stuff. And we have more Norwegian albums, like something called Nautilus, which became an insane hit like 3 years ago. And it's a book. I said, like, after this talk, I will put together some links to some of what I talk about and send it to you, so you can see what kind of comics we make in Norway. So Nautilus is quite popular. And I can talk a little bit later on when we go more into digital comics. I can talk about what Norwegian artists, at least some of them, the one I know about, what they do about going on in online selling stuff. But there are quite a lot of comics produced in Norway, which is very good. And since I'm part of the convention, we will always have to try to figure out what's going on. And as well, going to Denmark, we've had several Danish artists at the convention. We have some Swedish, as I said, Finnish creators. So we always try to figure out what's going on in Scandinavia, as well as, of course, French, Belgium. That's one of the reasons I started learning French a few years ago, so I can read French comics. So it's a lot of things going on in the world of comics. Not that much on web. I think web is harder to get into, because as Tor mentioned, it's a lot of competition on the web. And everybody I know about, they read a Scandinavian and the World, which is Danish comic. I don't know if you know about this one, but it's a great comic. But it's all the manhwa and manga and all these things from Asia, which is on all the web pages. So they are very popular. If you talk to a person, they know about these things. So it's hard, I think, to get your name published on the internet and make money out of it, because people expect things on the internet is free. So I would love to talk more about this, and I will talk more about the different sites that we have in Norway and other places for digital comics. So I think I'll leave it at there at the moment, and we can get back to these links later on.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll switch to Ola, which is a true part of a comic book festival, but not only, I suppose. So please.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I will talk so much about myself, but more of my working place. My name is Ola Hellsten. I live in Stockholm, and I'm a librarian and artistic director at the Stockholm Comics Library, Seriefestivalen, which has been active for 24 years. Yesterday, actually, exactly. And we have also, thank you. We have also organized the Stockholm International Comics Festival since 1999. And it has had several different names during its existence, but it's the same festival that has started out like a small, really small event with a few zine tables, and then gradually and organically evolved into a bigger event over a weekend with 7,000 visitors and international guests. I might stand out a bit in this crowd because I don't work particularly with digital media or digital platforms, but I do use them from time to time when I have to, mostly actually. And this year has of course kick-started digital festival, digital publishing for a lot of us. I think I will start just to get into the digital part of my work. We will have to dive a bit into the history of a more analog kind. So I will share the screen now. So, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not a Swedish woman, it's a Finnish woman that works as a librarian in Sweden. She had a famous Finnish stubbornness, and she was a wonderful woman named Kristina Kolamainen, who created the Serieteket at the Comic Library of Stockholm in 1996, against all odds, I might add. We have a long history of comics in Sweden, and comics started getting more respected during the 90s, but by 96 they were pretty much looked on with disdain from the public and from the media, and definitely from the libraries. And she took a step to change that. It's much better today, and I'd like to think that she and our library had a big part in it. So let's see if I can. All right. Doesn't seem to. Yeah, it changed picture for you too. Sorry, you see the new picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Serieteket is a library, a meeting place, and we also arrange a lot of programs, including the Comics Festival since 1999, as I said. And we usually have a theme every year. We usually have a guest country every year. There are some pictures from the Canada year of 2014. A few well-known names there, such as Kate Beaton, Seth, and Theater and Hicks. But we are a library first and foremost, and the libraries are traditionally not very good at handling digital media, as you might know. partly because we don't have that in our tradition, but also because with everything available on the internet, why would you need a librarian to curate it or to choose it for you? Some might think. I think a librarian would be good on the internet as well, but it's hard for the current format of libraries to handle those media. And there is also, when we work with festivals, we have a great part of the Stockholm Comics Festival is the great market we have, the book fair where we have about 200 exhibitors selling their stuff. And it has worked well from year to year, but as you see, it's quite crowded. And this year it was impossible to arrange it in any way. So enter Corona and enter the digital festival, as many of the festivals all over the world have had the same experience of. We had our festival in May, and it was we hoped for the longest time that we would be able to arrange it in real life, so to speak. But it became more and more obvious during the spring that that would be impossible. So we had to rethink it. And we had quite a short of advanced planning for the festival, but luckily we are part of a bigger cultural center in Stockholm, Kulturhuset, that also have theater stages, literary programs, music programs, and so on. And they also quickly readapted to the situation, and not being able to have stage plays or concerts, the staff was redirected to work with sort of a TV studio that they built up here. So we made a 2-day-long festival in a TV studio where the setup was similar to a talk show, actually. We had pre-recorded interviews, we have live programs, and we had a couple of hosts that presented both the live sent and the pre-recorded parts of the festival. It became a bit. It became a bit. What shall we say? The theme just disappeared. We just hastily tried to get hold of as many good guests as we could, and I think we had a good list of guests from all over the world.
Did they come to the festival, or you make some distant video and include them?
Distant videos, most of them, but a few Stockholm-based Swedish creators came to the studio and talked to us, but no international ones, of course.
Mm.
So we, as I said, we broadcasted it like a talk show. And in retrospect, I wouldn't do that again because it's a format that doesn't really work for the internet or the social media. So if we're going to do this in next spring again, we're going to do it more like with another kind of dramaturgical setup. Everything can still be watched if you go into the website serieteket.se. You can still look at the material from this spring. So it's a gradual learning process working with on the digital platforms and social media. I will talk briefly, just quickly, about the comic market as well, how it looks in Sweden. The Nordic countries, of course, share a similar history. We all have the Talking Ducks, the daily strips, and the jungle heroes like the Phantom, and they're quite popular here in Sweden. We had Franco-Belgian albums coming here in the 70s, and the adult comics coming in the 80s. And then, at least in Sweden, we had a very popular era of autobiographical comics in the 90s, still quite vital, I think. And since for the last 15 years, the big thing has been feminist satire. Liv Stromquist, many of you know about her, and her followers have been very popular in Sweden, still are. We don't have a big digital market, though, not as HP talked about what's happening in Finland, not yet. We do have many artists working well in the digital media and social media, but it has not really been a paradigm shift or a revolution of any kind. It's still, most people still focus on the printed books, even though they're not selling as good as they once did. And we have a quite small language market. We have a few exceptions though, like you can see here on the screen. We have Instagram comics, very popular, but not bringing in much money as previously stated. We have a recent piece of news is a Nosebleed manga app. There is the Swedish manga publisher Nosebleed that created their own app that will publish digital comics from all over the world. But as I said, the goal for most of our creators is still the printed books. And you can see that with the Kickstarter example here, 3 of the 10 greatest Kickstarter projects in Sweden ever are for printed comic books or graphic novels. So among them, the start of a printed magazine, Herman Hedning, by Jonas Damell.
Right.
I will return to this later on, but this is all in all what I have to say right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I will switch to Julien Aubert. Julien, which works since several years, which a parallel universe between comics and video, TV. I'll let you explain, Julien.
Yes, thank you, Wandrille. I'll share my screen. I swim between different things. My company is bigger than fiction. As Wandrille said during the introduction, I'm not a writer, I'm not a comic writer, and I'm not specialized in comic book or comic stories. I'm a producer of new narrative on the new narrative field. I explore new ways of telling stories, and I will tell you why I decided to explore social media storytelling with comic storytelling. First of all, we are a social media agency. For the 10 last years, I've been working closely with TV channels, French TV channels, Arte, French Television, Canal+, and I was working with them on how they can promote their TV programs on social media. The answer was all the time by telling stories. But when you want to tell stories on social media, you need to think about how to write them for social media. I started a production company like 4 or 5 years ago because working closely with producers, writers, TV channels make me very curious about producing my own productions. So we decided to produce projects that use our strengths of the strengths we got by being a social media agency. We do community management, we do video editing, we do media buying, influence marketing, and in the same, we want to use it in the way we make content. So we make content that actually think about the distribution. We think about the distribution problems or constraints or rules, things that you should do when you distribute on a new channel, and we we put it and we work closely with the writers to make content that actually fits in new channels. Sorry, it's not very clear, but I hope you understand. We produced, lately, we produced a podcast, a series podcast. It's a 6 episode of 20 minutes. It's a Western. It was fun to actually write a long piece of fiction, but on audio only. We did produce an animation series called Rap Fighter. It's a rap battle on YouTube, and it's the public that decide who between the 2 rappers who did this rap battle should go to the semi-final, final, etc. So it's almost interactive. It's a participative series, and we did two projects, ET and Anstraviata, that the pieces, the project I will tell you about. But first, I wanted to closely tell you why we produce content for social media. Why we do social media first concept. In France, nowadays, 60 million people use internet every day. 39 million people are on social media, and 97% of people being on social media every day use it on mobile. When they are on mobile, they go on YouTube, on Facebook, or in Instagram. And in Instagram, for example, they spend 30 minutes per day, but they use it 10 times a day. It means that if you do a quick calculation, you can imagine that people go 10 times per day on Instagram, 3 minutes. 3 minutes, it's a moment, it's very short. It's a really special conference. So it means that we should do very bits of content, but for every day, because people, when they are on Instagram, they follow you. So it means that they want to listen to you every day, but for a very small amount of time. That's our way of thinking. We want to go where the audience is, the new audience, and we want to give them a very cool project, very cool stories, because we consider these new platforms as new video players. On Instagram, you have the stories. Stories is called it's vertical, a vertical screen, and when you tap on this screen, you go to a next video. It's a very new paradigm, a new way of experimenting video and contents. It's for us, it's new formats. When we think about a project on Instagram, we start from scratch. We just look at the video player and say, okay, how should we do for this very special video player? There is other cool things on social media, like live. We are live right now, so people are experimenting a new way of telling things. But we could tell fiction on live. We can tell fiction on stories, on chatbots, on albums, on podcasts, on vlogs, and many new formats, new players. So there is two comics that we actually, 2 comic series that we actually produced for Instagram. The first is ET. It was in 2017 the first daily serial fiction on Instagram. It was a world premiere. And it lasted for 3 seasons. For 3 seasons, we met our audience, and that was a very cool experience. We started another show in 2019. It's called Instraviata. It mixes fiction and documentary. Instraviata, as the name of this concept tells you, it's an adaptation of La Traviata, the opera piece, but made for Instagram. We used comic books to tell the story of La Traviata. Why comic books on Instagram? Why comic books fit so much with Instagram? You can see this, is it working? Yes. You can see how what is the experience for the public? You have an album. An album is 10 screens, 10 cases. I don't remember. 10 frames. 10 frames.
Square frames.
Square. 10 square. So we have the first square. It's the cover of the episode that tells you the title of the episode, and then you have 9 squares. You guys are comics author. You know that the Belgium comic books, the waffles, you say, le gaufrier, as we say in French. Sometimes it's 12 squares. It could be 9. So we thought, okay, we have this format on Instagram. It's a 10 square thing. We don't know what to put in it, but we should work with some people who know how to tell a story with 9 squares. And actually, there is another thing, is that on Instagram, half of the people, they use Instagram without sound. They cannot listen to the thing they are looking. So we wanted to make something very cool, very explore the maximum of the potential of Instagram, but with no sound. And we thought, okay, 9 squares, no sound, but a lot of storytelling, comics, of course. I can tell stories, and I can find people who knows how to tell good stories with episodes of 9 squares. Summer, that's the name of the project. It's actually a 60 episode series that we broadcast daily during 2 months. The name of the program is Summer, so you guess it's during summertime, and yeah, it is the project I can talk to you about. Maybe I have two more slides. In a way to tell stories, I told you that we use the album functionality because it's something that exists on Instagram for everybody. But we wanted to explore 2 ways of distributing the content, because Instagram has something else to offer. The stories. The stories is actually the coolest way to tell stories on Instagram. In 2017, stories, they were really fresh. We didn't know how to use it exactly. So we thought, okay, we will use the same content. What we want to publish on albums, we'll just publish it on the stories. We will make squares that are not squares, because it will be like frames of a vertical 9:16 format. And Erwan Surcouf, the illustrator, just made the content fit into a square and put some other background on the top and on the bottom of the screen. So yeah, so that's the format of été. It has been made by 4 writers. The second season was illustrated by Cécile Bidot, who was working with Wandrille on the very great comic books that I advise you to go read. But Cécile did an amazing job putting animation on the second season. We put animation a little bit. It was moving some frames were moving, and she did a great job. Cécile is working with 3 writers, Camille Duvel-Leroy, who is an interactivity writer. She comes from the webdoc. Nowadays, she's working on the VR, virtual reality headsets fictions. And so she knows about creating interactive stuff. And Camille had the original ideas doing a telenovela for Instagram, and she has been collaborating with Thomas Caden and Joseph Safieddine, who are two comic books writers. Thomas Caden is known for having working on Les Autres Gens with Wandrille. Wandrille is everywhere.
No.
and yeah, that's these 4 creative people work on the new kind of content that is not so far from comic book.
And this was published at the end.
Yes.
Yes, it was published as a printed album.
Ah, okay. Published, yes, published on paper. The stuff paper. I was trying to make a joke about paper, but it failed. The first season was published on the public on the book, but the launch of the book was not a success, and the editing company didn't go further. It didn't go further.
Okay, well, thank you. And you have other projects like this, who are mixing comics and support.
I have Instraviata. That's the second project. For now,
yep.
we don't have other projects.
So that's the two experience. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
So you can put the screen.
Yes.
So we can go back to the wolf subject. I will for the rest of the webinar. There was 4 subjects that I wanted to see with you. First is the community, because internet is mostly. Julien, we still see your screen. Yeah, the community, because of course internet, the first main stuff with internet is being connected to a lot of people, and of course I was wondering how internet allow you to connect with people which are now not your direct like friends or usual community, as author or as a festival, as working for festival to recruit, and maybe is there for you some online family or stuff like that. In France, we got in the 90s, beginning of the 2000 years, a very big movement called the web blogging. There was a lot of comic book blogger which came. It was free, totally free, and the usual comic scene was looking with a little despite, like, what? We're gonna buy that? But and yeah, some librarian was like, what? It's free. They're running the stuff, and the thing that all those bloggers begins authors, by the way, and got published in between. Then it goes away, it fades away, but still there was a strong community of bloggers. And nowadays we got maybe it's quite recent in France, but it's the big incoming of Webtoon. So we have seen that with H-Lehkonen. Webtoon is, you know, those comics which are really done for a telephone, which you usually read. So H-Lehkonen do that on Webtoon, and Webtoon is a Korean platform, and it allows to go to very new generation, because most of the readers are quite young, I think. So well, this is a really open conversation. So I was talking about that, but maybe you can enlighten us about your experience with the online community. Maybe H-Lehkonen, you can speak about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned that in Finland we also had the kind of like web blog thing. Now that you told me about the thing in France, it's quite similar to that. At one point, comics blogs that were just free blogs that you make online were really, really popular. They were so popular that comic schools such as Liminka School of Arts started having that as a mandatory thing to do in the school. It was one of the school exercises. Like everybody came into the comics school, and the first thing you did was start a blog and keep that blog going on throughout the school year. And I think that was also one of the reasons why they became so popular in Finland, because because every year 30, 40 people start in Liminka School of Arts, and every one of them will make a blog, and at least half of them will keep up with it after the school as well. So that created this huge community. If it's all right, I would share my screen a little bit so that I can show you the sarjakuvablogit.com so that you can see what it looks like. Here it is. All right.
I have to say, as a teacher, that most of my students have not comic blogs, but they all share on Instagram their stuff. So that's still working.
Yeah, nowadays this is not a mandatory thing to do in the comic school anymore. But when I was studying there in 2010, it was a mandatory thing to do. But there, of course, people were using all kinds of blogging systems, but in 2008, a Finnish comic society started their own sarjakuvablogit.com, which was only for comic blogs. So that really, really lifted the whole thing. So this is the website right now. This is how it looks like there. Well, it's in Finnish, of course, but there is actual like there is always once a month we choose the comic blog of the month, and there is these things like this one where we have like the comics blog has sent this sketchbook to an artist so that they can make a review on it on the website, and there is all kinds of things like this on the website. So yeah, this is what it looks like. We can and that's a really big thing that really brought us this beautiful community in comics. We have the Helsinki Comics Festival, and in the Comics Festival there was always a meetup for the people who made comic blogs as well. So it also started happening in the in real life as well. People were coming together, they found each other through the blogs and they came together. And a lot of these comics that were found on the comic blogs initially were also published in print.
Okay, and
so
is there some
really
connections between Finnish bloggers and other Nordic or international countries? Because speaking for France, it's very French.
Yeah, most of the Finnish blogs were in Finnish, and nowadays Finnish people are moving also more into Instagram, making comics in English. So I think now people are finding communities that are international more. But back then, from 2008 to maybe 2015, the blogs were mainly in Finnish, and the community was very Finland-centric.
Okay, and Tor, what about you? Did you develop some community of other authors or just readers?
Well, I've just been focusing on getting my own stuff out there and really trying to think about like, and mine is more like a homepage where there's only my comic there, but I know there's others in Denmark that do web comics as well. But I think most of it is like on Instagram, like you said. These are really great platforms, especially Instagram, but sometimes also Facebook or something.
Because I don't know if seeing your comics, it really looks like a very cool comics, but still a cool weblog, cool webtoon. You could really like use it like this and read it in one way. Yeah. And according those platforms like the Korean one, Webtoon, it's not only support, it's to a strong community where the commenters are really putting people in between them. Like, and I was wondering, I know that nowadays, back in the days of the web blogging, there was a lot of, people making jokes about other bloggers, so they will cross and share publics like that.
I know there's one called Tapas.
Yeah.
That I've really considered, but I haven't really, gone into actually publishing on that. But I think there's a whole, there's a community around that, and I don't know if my comic really fits in because there's a lot of that manga style in the tapas as well. But
yeah,
but I think
should try.
I could try. Yeah. But I think I mean I think Instagram is a really good if you can make that square comic book, then it's a really great place to be, I think.
And what about the festival? I was wondering, yeah, if you do like a comic digital comic contest, and which is, by the way, in France there is 2 or 3 digital comic contests, so people can express themselves, which of course is nowadays really an important issue in the ways that people can be there. So is there some way to get some new artists, young ones, local scene, Ola and Frode?
I can answer. I can start first. In Norway, for I think almost 15 years ago, there was one guy who started up something called Nettserier.no, which now is more or less not working as much, but that was a great place for young and aspiring people to put up the latest pages of comics. There was a lot of good stuff there as well, but of course everybody could publish on that site. But it was very early, 15 years ago on web. But lately, I think people moved on to Deviantart, which a lot of people published some stuff on. And I know a few Norwegian comic books actually was discovered on Deviantart and got published in paper and magazines later on. I will send a link to one of that comic in when I send some stuff afterwards. But I think people have moved more to other places. Kickstarter is used by a lot of new artists, and also by artists who have been publishing comics. But the competition is fierce in the regular comic books as well, so they will launch their own books on Kickstarter to others, and also Gumroad, I think it's one site is called, which has a lot of comics. We try to always look at what is going on in the website, both in Norway and internationally. We try to get people, but we don't have too many competition ourselves because the big publishing company in Norway, Egmont, they have competitions, which gets a lot of people to submit the stuff. Not that much maybe online web, but the comic strips at least. So when you have someone big who promised you like 100,000 Norwegian crowns or whatever and publish in a magazine, why would you send into a convention?
I agree, but I was more thinking about totally disconnect to print, to books. You know, like comics, which are really meant to be online, not printed. You know, it's a world difference.
We would as a convention, we would gladly have people who only publish online because it's comics. If it's printed or if it's online or if it's on a cell phone, it doesn't matter. It's the reading kind of thing with pictures and text and images. Even if it's some animation involved, we're happy to include it because we think a little bit broader than just the regular comic book magazine. So we try to keep it up and try to follow what are happening all over, but it's hard. It's big. It's getting bigger, and it's harder to find out what's actually being published online. If it's printed, there's a lot of catalog indexes of what has been printed during a year, but what has been published online, there is no one to keep track of what's being published. I remember one comic book artist said, "You know you are successful when somebody else sends your comic strip to you to say, you should read this one, it's great." Then you know you have made a success because somebody else has actually read your comics and thought it was good.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
but it's almost impossible to find out what's going on.
I just want to say something about like the difference between printed and web. I think there's a lot of people that love comics that are like me, and you know, I just turned 40 and you know have grown up with comics and know a comic, like there's something safe in a printed comic that you know, I can you know, sit and read it and everything, and to them that's a comic book. And I totally agree with Frode and everything he says about like a comic book it's just a great story told with the images, and you get one image and then you go to the next image, and it doesn't really matter if it's online or if it's on print, but there's just a big barrier for people to actually read a comic online because they're not used to it still. I mean, at least for my generation. And then the younger people who not grew up with comics in the same way as I did in the 90s and the 80s, where comics was like really, really big. It's a different leap, you know. So for example, like when I was on a comic convention, I tried to like stand with an iPad and show people my comic, and you know, some people are like, wow, that's interesting, but others were like, well, where's your comics? And I was like, well, it's on the iPad, and like, I don't know. They couldn't understand, you know, that I was actually making a comic that was not in print. So there is like some barrier for that generation, at least. I think for the younger people, it's just natural that they can go online and
yeah. As a teacher, I can tell that the young student I teach for young guys between 17 till 24 till 26, but somehow I think they're more 8 till 12, it depends of the days, but they read like a lot online and a lot on webtoons. So I was forced to look at that. It's like, and that's interesting. Yeah.
Just to mention that there's another barrier that our generation met 15 years ago. When the manga books came to Europe, suddenly you have to read the comics from the back. And I know a lot of people said, like, I can't read this stuff. It's the wrong direction. So we all have our barriers to cross over. Oh, yeah.
Ola, what is about online comics on
yeah.
What is the link with the festival? Maybe you told me that as a librarian you are more into books, but
no, I would love to work more with digital media and web-based media and stuff, but there is not really a platform. There are some e-comic platforms for libraries in the world, but they aren't really functioning very well because, as I said before, there is not really a need for them, or because they are available on the internet in different forms, or there is not a perceived need to have a librarian tell you what to read about. I think it would be. I think it would be good in today's, like Frode says, it's just too much. Keep in touch with all the webcomics all over the world. It's so bloody much. It was during the days of the heyday of the weblogs, as you talked about. We have those in Sweden as well. For example, we have the Canadian-Swedish artist, very good, named Renée Engström, who did Anders Loves Maria, a very successful blog comic all over the world that she could live quite well on, as I have understood it. But those days are pretty much over, and it's moved into the Instagram. Instagram have become the new generation of blog comics, and in also many ways the new generation of the newspaper daily strips. With the main difference, it's the readers expect them for free, and so that's a problem, of course. It's so many topics at once here. I get a little
no, it's okay. It's
confused,
okay.
But yeah, I would like to work more with them. We have had panels and linked the digital comics to our festivals in different forms. But since the Swedish creators often work both with the printed media and the digital media, it's not really an either-or situation. Not yet, at least.
I was wondering if...
As for the festival organizer and librarian, I can also say that the social media and the society, the community we create, is very important to us. We're the only okay, we're the only big comic library in Sweden, so we reach people from the entire nation and beyond, and for that we need to have a dialogue with through social media, through Instagram, to Facebook, through Twitter, and it becomes one like a family of sorts, but also one family that it's a part of a bigger family, that it's the comic community of Sweden, which in turn is part of the comics community of the North, and so on. It's extremely important to us.
I was wondering if I don't know. Speaking of that, I don't have any example nowadays in France, but we used to have some what was called aggregator, which was following, allowing people to follow some interesting comics blogs, and there was some selection, and there was
RSS
like
reader.
one, huh?
Yeah. RSS feed, RSS readers.
Yes, on RSS feed you can find your own still, but there was like some guy which has their own selection, and you could follow those selection, and I think that there's something still missing somehow, that we in France, I can tell, and I'm very into weblog, comics, webtoons, and I don't find someone which is, and maybe you have some reference of people which are like a light in the night, telling, okay, this is good, that is good, because if you want to see, there are so many things, even just in France, so I don't mean the world, that it's very hard to find the good thing, and not only the popular things. So if you have any ideas or reference, I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, 10 years ago it was just make something good and people will find it, but that's not the reality today. I think you need to also be able to sell it or promote it or all these things. Because if you just make something that's good and put it online, then people are on Netflix and YouTube, and they won't find your comic book on their own. So there's a big problem.
Maybe Julien, you have an idea on that?
Yes, because I remember after doing ET, some brands they come to me, like a big agency, like, wow, ET is really great, can you do something for us? And I talked to the writers I was working with, and I said, yeah, let's do something for Microsoft. It's cool. Maybe it's money. We can do something. And then the agency was saying, no, not these guys. I want like guys who have a lot of followers, and there is people in France who have a lot of followers on Instagram and do comics, but the difference is that they are not writers. They don't think, I want to do things, that's the stories I want to do. They are just, they are like more like influencers, so they observe the platform, they observe what people say and think and how they do it, and they copy it. So the quality is not the same, and what they have to say is more, they tell their life, and they talk about internet memes of tendencies, etc. So maybe it's just the situation of being a writer. I mean, when you're a writer, it means that you tell something, you have to say to the world. If you want to success to Instagram, and it's unfortunate, you just need to say what people are expecting you to say, and but there is few people, but I agree with you, Wandrille, it's really hard to find them, and yeah, it's very hard to promote yourself when you have something different and very original.
Can I?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, can I comment on the about what Tor said about the like, it's not enough that the comic is good, because that is almost kind of true, but also slightly there's more to that, more like, because like nowadays, especially on social media, yeah, it's kind of not enough that the comic itself is good. The comic also needs to be formatted good, you know, it needs to be shareable. Like if you take you imagine like a comic book of some sorts, like a Marvel book, you cannot publish it on social media, one page every day. It will be like reading one sentence of a book like once a day. You will be completely lost with it. So on social media, the comic needs to be fitting for that, just like what Julien has been saying all this time in here. So yeah.
I'm still involved in some online contest, and which is interesting that there is a lot of people, like you can see that on Instagram. There is the comic book, the online contest of Angoulême, and so you just have to go on the hashtag. I forgot the name of the hashtag, but I will share it. And so you see there is a lot of people taking part. Of course, there is a lot of not so good comics because many people try, but you discover tons of new things that you can find. And yeah, I'm pretty interesting, and especially for Nordic comics that I don't know. So I was wondering, maybe there is some Nordic link where we can find all the Frode, yeah.
Yeah, I think that the webcomic thing here, which gives us a lot of new comic books, because as we said, everybody can publish. If you draw like one image, you can publish on the web, and suddenly you have a webcomic. But what you're missing out is typically, as you said, the guiding light that points you to the right direction. That would more or less be the old editor in a publishing house, because an editor would have two functions. One, he would say no to the bad ones, and he will instruct to help some comics to be good. While on the internet, if everybody can publish, of course, everybody who would be turned down would be published. They would not get help, so some people would not make it the last little bit to make it a really good comic. But you would also have some true gems that would pop up because the editor would turn them down, but they become actually popular. But we're missing that helper in a way for a comic, because a lot of people who publish comic, they do it by themselves and they publish it on the net, and there's no one else involved until it gets published. So I think that's some people who publish comics on the internet, they should maybe have some help, but they can use their friends as well. They don't need an editor all the time. But because it's so many comics, so the guiding light, the pointing finger, that's an editor in a way.
Oh, that's interesting. I want just to make a quick comeback on the health situation now, which makes that we can have some events, yeah, in real life. In real life, when we were comics blogging, when we first met the other guy, it was, hey, let's go IRL. In real life, we'll see each other. And now that's exactly the opposite. So I was wondering how you do that with your festival. What are the solutions? What are the good solutions? And because Ola, you tell us that your first try wasn't for you the good way. So what are the new solutions you thought about?
I didn't really say that.
I'm sorry.
I will work on the dramaturgy with about the program part of the festival. But what you're talking about now, it's the market part of the festival. And that's, of course, a problem. And I've heard it from pretty much every Swedish comics publisher and book publisher of every kind, that since I don't have the book fairs, the conventions, the festivals where people can just take a look, just turn the pages on some physical books, they lose a lot of they still sell a lot during the web, through the web shops and stuff, because that's how people buy the books nowadays. But they miss those extra events when they sell thousands of books just in a couple of days. And that's with the small market of Sweden, it's very vital to them. So it's and the digital versions of the book markets doesn't really solve that, because you don't get the same focus on the books. You don't get to feel and turn the page and see the books for real, and therefore you don't sell as much. So this year it's a real challenge for pretty much every printed book publisher.
And Frode, what about how you handle this the online festival now?
Yeah, we had planned for like a good festival in September this year, and then Corona hit, and then things started lightening up, and we said, okay, we'll do a little bit smaller because there were some restrictions. And was it like 5 days before the convention? They said, no, we're closing all, you cannot do anything physically. So we were like, okay, we had like sort of guessed it. So we had limited list, but we had a few people coming over, and we borrowed the room from one of the publishers in Norway, in Outland Publishing, and started figure out, okay, how should we do this? So Twitch, so we sitting there and did some interviews in that publishing house in a way, and so it was. I would totally agree with Ola that is when you first try, you figure out like, okay, it worked, but you would like to do something different, and I think maybe some conventions should go together, figure out how to do best things online, because if everybody, why should we all make the same mistakes?
Yeah.
And so it might be something is a good idea, and I will have to say I would prefer to have the artist at location, because if you're an artist and your participation in the convention was sitting in your own room, then you're not the part of the convention in a way. So it's like convention was back in the days a place where the artists could go. They will meet the other artists. They will have a good time. The last 10 years, convention has been more and more work for artists. They're sitting in signings and selling things all the time. But it's like we prefer to have them, to give them an experience as well. But we can still do that and have online, because if you do things online, you will reach more people than you would have in that room in front of you.
But
so even though with no Corona, we would still, I think we would do something that would work online.
So maybe doing what you say, like you invite a few artists, so they are really into the convention, but open online. So you will be a room with 3 meters between each.
Yeah, we will have to see what we can do. And Ola has some experience now, so I think it would be great actually, at least for Scandinavian, because Scandinavian convention is more or less similar.
Yeah.
French convention are a little bit different. We usually have like 40, almost 50 different programs each year, interviews and shows. So having a talk with Ola later on one day to just pitch some ideas, I think that would be a great idea. And we can include Arnie from maybe Denmark, who's one of the conventions in Denmark. So I think that would be a great idea.
Ola, you were saying?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is, of course, with all the tragic and the pandemic going on here, it's also a great opportunity, because most of us have talked about working more digitally for years, and now we're getting kicked into a situation where we have to solve problems. So we just be forced to do some things that we have wanted to do for a long time. And as I said before, it's not an either-or situation. We have to work both physical and digital in the future. And I think this is a learning curve, and we're learning from every event we create now.
Well, Tor, you had something to say, I'm saying.
I think it's already been said. I just wanted to ask, like, the festivals, like they should maybe do a very Corona-friendly festival that only focus on the webcomics and the online, you know, because it still feels like there's a lot of focus on the printed, but right now that's the right moment to say, okay, let's have a a festival that only focuses on online comics and you know, zoom in on that and saying, yeah.
Well, but what we're gonna do with the old authors of comics? They're gonna stay at home and die? No.
Yeah, they're gonna get corona, all of them.
I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about only digital, but we're definitely going to focus more on it.
No, but the focus on that, because I actually joke a lot. I was in an interview a week ago, and I joked about it. I said, like, this comic is actually the most corona-friendly experience you can have, because you are not, you know, going into a store and buying it. You are actually, you know, reading it at home, and so you can get that comic experience without having a convention and all that stuff. But of course, I mean,
no risk. Comics with no risk.
But actually, I've heard that the publishers in Norway, I think they said they sold more books now in Corona because people are staying at home. So they actually buy, but they buy online. So they have sold pretty much a lot of comics online. But I agree with Ola. On the web comics, having them at conventions, of course, that's the way we have to go. Like, we introduced cosplay a few years ago because that was popular. We've had video games, we've had board games, mostly comic book related, of course. And of course, web comics. We've had web comics at the convention several times, but we would invite the artists. So if, like, Tor, you might be a guest at Raptus 1 year, but we will, of course, we would like to have you at but if you prefer to stay in Denmark, that's an but we would like to have you over.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay, if you don't mind, I will switch to the question of the public. That there's some. So I got a question from Sweden. What is the impact of digital publishing on the traditional print publishing? Does it have a virtuous effect and encourage more readers to buy comics books too? I have my own idea, but if someone want to have the lead on that.
Can I reply to that, as I have just very recently started my own publisher, which is only ebooks publisher for now. But basically, what I am trying to do with this is actually that I will first sell ebooks of the comics, and if they do very well, I have done marketing research, and then I know which ones to print into paper books. And basically, it's marketing research that they paid me to. You know, people bought the books in ebooks, and then I can choose which ones sold the best and make them into the printed books. And this is a lot of what is already happening. That's how Kickstarters mostly do. Like, people make webcomics and they do very well online, and then they choose to make them into a Kickstarted book. Like, a lot of was it Ola who mentioned that a lot of the comics that were made as Kickstarters were for printed books. But and a lot of the comics that are in general internationally on Kickstarter, not just from Scandinavia or Finland, but they are, a lot of them are for printed books, versions of webcomics that have already been published and maybe even available for free online. So, well, I think this is kind of like changing the thing a little bit. Like, people are now wanting to see what they are buying before. They want to read it before they actually purchase the book. But in general, books are still being made. Books are not dying because of webcomics. I mean, I also, like, if I buy a book, I borrow it from a library first and then I buy it. Like, I will always check the book before buying it, like, even if it's not online.
Well, in France, when we got this famous blog waves, the first publisher which published a web blogger asked for the web bloggers that they put offline the material, which was crazy stupid, because people which were buying this thing, they read it for free. They were not buying it to read it for the first time. They were buying it like a testimony of their admiration for the guy, And in fact, about the webtoon, the Korean webtoon, it begins 12 years ago like this with some Korean artists we couldn't get published and put their comics online. And nowadays it's 50% of the market in Korea. And most of the books are just, as you say, like a consecration of you got a book published because the webtoon is successful. And yeah, and I will say that I don't think at all that the book will suffer of those online publications. It's like a, you know, it's like radio when TV came out. There were people say, "Oh, radio will die," and we all know that radio doesn't die. So I think that it's just something which goes in a good way. It's a new way to tell stories, and it will help, I think. Yep. Ola?
Another aspect of the question Maria asked, I have contacted most of the Swedish comic publishers, and many of them say that the way to find new talents nowadays, it's looking at Instagram, at social media, and the web published comics. And we even have a publisher called Placenta that's more or less only focus on comics and cartoons that already have been published on Instagram or Twitter. But I thought it was just a one-way direction. But when I asked them, it also goes in the opposite direction. Because when they publish a book based on the Instagram accounts, they also get thousands of new followers on the Instagram accounts. So it's not a one-way. It's quite an interesting symbiosis.
Yeah, you touch two different publics, like the book-related publics, really, and the online publics, and it's a mixing. I got another question for the makers. How do you create for digital platforms and for the prints? What are the difference in the creative and narration process? So maybe Tor, you can answer that. But yeah, you are mostly working for digital first. Both.
Yeah, I actually when I do it, I make sure that everything I do is still within a page format. So I have everything ready for print. I don't make anything that's, you know, so tall that it won't fit into a comic book. So, okay. I have it ready for print in that sense. It will be a little bit different format, but
yeah, the day a publisher comes to you, say, yeah, it's okay, I'm ready.
Exactly, it is ready in that sense. But I focus on the online now, and that's and the good thing about online is that you can you know, I can make 10 pages and put it online, and then I make 10 pages more and put it. I wouldn't be able to print like that, you know, that would be weird. So you have to, maybe in my comic it would be like 100 pages at a time or something, because it's an action page turner. So you've got to have at least, I mean, at least 70 pages or more, because otherwise it's read within 5 minutes, you know.
Yeah, it's a 5 minutes, as said Julien, which is leaving us.
Yes, yes, I don't want to stop the conversation.
Bye, Julien. The attention on online will be 5 minutes, which is usually the time of reading of an episode on Webtoon. It's a 5 minutes reading, so you can have the attention for more. So you have to be very sharp. HP, you're working on Webtoon, so maybe you can confirm.
Yes.
Or
I like the first comic I made for them, Immortal Nerd, was basically a page format that was just put into that pipe or like the scrollable format. And to be honest, I could have done better. Like that one, I am fine with the story and such, but I do think I did so much better with Life Outside the Circle, which was perfected for the scrollable format. But then again, now that I am in process of getting Life Outside the Circle, I have had interest from France and USA to publish Life Outside the Circle as a book. It is a translating process. I am translating the scroll format comic into book format comic, which means that I will be drawing more panels in between the other panels, because in the scroll format the time feels different, because a lot of the time happens when you're scrolling down. If there is a longer piece of just background or something that you're scrolling downwards, it feels like a lot of time passed in the comic. So you cannot do that in book. So I will have to be making more panels that tell more about the time that has passed in the comic. So, and I don't want to put like, it's not my style to have like a text later that day, you know, I will do it with pictures rather than text. So I will be drawing a lot of extra panels with something that shows how the time is going. So like the timing thing is something that I had to, it's like, I'm calling it translation, because it feels like I need to localize it somehow.
Yeah,
Actually,
I'm sorry, it's more an adaptation.
Yeah, I just want to say it reminds me that the difference between scrolling and having like a comic that has 2 pages. When you're reading a comic and you have like, you see the whole layout of all the panels at once, when you're not scrolling, when you're having a physical comic book, which I remember when I was a child. Then when you then turn the page, then you can't not look at the last image of the page. It's like you are too what do you say? It's just very exciting, and you're like, okay, I can see ahead of time what's happening, but I gotta read where I am now, and you don't get that with the scrolling down, because it's continuously like.
Right, but the thing is that you have a real surprise in the webtoon line,
yeah.
because you don't have to see there is a kiss, there is a kiss.
Exactly.
No, it's a kissing story.
Yeah.
Well, I got another question. How do online publisher like a Webtoon, Tapas react if you want to try to publish your digital comics later as a printed album? And how about other way around? What do the IRL publishers think is if your comic is already published on a digital platform? We almost respond on that, but still,
is it all right if I like because this is actually what I am doing, like Webtoons has exclusive digital rights to Life Outside the Circle and Immortal Nerd, but in the contract we had specified that I have the permission to publish it on paper, but they have like, I need to tell them first, like, so that they have like the first dibs if they want to publish it on paper. And I did email them and ask them, how do you feel about this? And they were like, yeah, well, we don't have any book publishing plans right now, so go ahead and do what you want. So they were very fine with the publication, and of course they want to still, like, if the comic would have been like a mega success, they probably would have wanted to keep the print rights as well, or like make me a better offer, because that's basically what they wanted.
Maybe like, they do that for the maybe they do that for the Korean version.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's what they had. They wanted to have like that I needed to give them in the contract. We specified that I need to give them the right to give me a better offer if I get an offer from somewhere else, which is fine by me, because if I get more money from my comic, I am not against that in any way.
Is that a standard contract or custom made for you?
I negotiated my own contract, but basically I do think that is one of the parts that is very common in all of the contracts. Of course, I do not know for sure, but still.
Yeah, I know for sure, and it's very common that the Webtoon platforms doesn't take the right to print, But on the other hand, in France, by example, there are some very big company which is called Dupuis, which is hold webtoon platforms. And when they publish a webtoon, they made an offer, like an option of print, but it's a paid option. It means that if they do that, there is another extra money for adaptation, as you say, translation in pages. So I think we answered this question. We got a question from UK. Hello, UK. It can be said the internet is the world's largest fossil fuel burning machine. Okay, I see it coming. As such, how we as cartoonists, editor, writers, education, festival organizer, and publisher create works and events that are more sustainable. I suggest paper is the best carbon capture technology we have. Okay, Frode, that's for you.
I like computers, and I know this is typical question I have to discuss with people. But if you think about like drawing a comic, well, you draw it on paper, or you can do it on a computer, of course. But then you send to a print house, and they print it, and they send it with cars somewhere, and it gets sent further out to the stores. I think like the imprint of the nature is pretty high on the transport and also the paper use as well. But it's like, what can you do? I think both of them would require some imprint on nature, even if you read it or if you read it online. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's better to use the paper than online.
Not speaking about, I don't know if you have the same, but in France there is a so big production that there is a lot of books which are destroyed. When you don't sell enough, you have some stock, it costs so much, so people prefer to destroy and reprint eventually that keep the stock. So you destroy and then reprint, go to the printer, bring some stuff. So it's not an easy piece to discuss, but it's interesting to put it on the table.
And I, yet again, I'm barging in because one of the things that I do feel that we should be doing is getting rid of the streaming stuff. Like Webtoon it's streaming the comic, you are reading it so that it's constantly online. If you would buy those same episodes or download them onto your computer, you would be using way less energy because you would be reading it locally instead of having to run it constantly streaming online. Like if you download a video from online, it's way less energy than if you watch it on Netflix that is streaming it. So I do think that downloads should be coming back because that is way less energy hogging than what this streaming is doing right now.
Well, I think we got a last one question, but I will quickly answer it for everybody because I know the answer. Which how does one make money if you don't collect your material as a book later? I can tell that for Webtoon.fr, some of the artists are paid by the platform, but I don't know really how it works for them. But I feel that we have to quit because it's we already have a longer time than what is planned. I wanted to thank you all for your time, for your very interesting point of view information, and I'm now very more curious about what are published in the Nordic countries. I have some a little approach now, but I will of course will be very happy to see you again. I will thank the French Institute of, I don't forget, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Nordland, and hope you had a great time.
Not Norway, but okay, yeah.
Oh, Nordland. Oh, sorry.
Just to say what's popular with comics in Norway at the moment. This is from previous year. This is something called Christmas comics.
Okay.
I have a huge stack in the back here because I'm writing about them for some magazines. Every year in Norway, you can call them like an annual. All the comics have Christmas comics, and they sell a lot of it. sell more than the regular comic you normally do, because everybody, it's tradition. You have to buy some Christmas comics. Fewer pages, cost more money, but everybody buys stuff. That's a Norwegian thing. Christmas comics.
Let's make it. Let's make it by us. Good idea. Thank you so much.
We have it in Sweden as well.
Yeah.
If you have the last word. Well,
I would just say comics is much better for the the whole universe than streaming on Netflix. It's much less polluting, and so.
No, except when there is an adaptation of your comics on Netflix, you will love
Of
that.
course.
Bye bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Read more
Bye-bye.
comics in
Au
any
revoir.
form.
Yeah.